Have you ever had a moment, maybe late at night, or while holding an old photograph, when someone from your past suddenly comes to mind? Someone you should have thanked but never did? It's strange how life moves so quickly that gratitude often lags behind. And before we know it, years have passed, leaving us with memories instead of chances. There are letters that exist only in the heart. Thank yous that were composed 1,000 times in the mind but never made it to the lips. Gratitude that swells up in quiet moments, decades too late, for people who are gone now or lost to time or simply impossible to find. These unspoken words gather like ghosts, gentle and persistent, reminding us of all the ways we were loved and taught and shaped without ever saying the simple words that mattered most. Thank you. The thing about youth is that it creates a particular kind of blindness. Not cruelty, not selfishness exactly, just an inability to see all the hands that are holding everything together. Children move through the world assuming it will always catch them, never wondering who wove the net. And then time passes, years go by, and suddenly, in the middle of some ordinary moment, a memory surfaces. And with it comes the understanding. Oh, that was love. That was a gift. That was someone teaching me something essential without either of us knowing it was a lesson at all. There was a woman who worked at the library, the small public library in town, the one with the creaky floors and the smell of old paper and carpet that had seen decades of feet. She wasn't a librarian, not officially. She was the person who shelved the books, who straightened the chairs, who made sure everything was in its place. Her name was Mrs. Chun. Or maybe it was Mrs. Chan. The memory is fuzzy on details that should matter but somehow don't. What matters is this: she was always there. Every Saturday morning when the library opened, she would be at the front desk. And she would smile. Not the automatic smile that adults give to children out of obligation. A real smile. One that reached her eyes. One that said, without words, that she was glad to see whoever walked through that door. She never said much. Her English was limited, shaped by an accent that made some words harder than others. But she understood everything. A child could walk up to her with a question, stumbling over words, trying to explain the kind of book they wanted but couldn't quite describe. And she would nod. And then she would walk through the aisles, her fingers trailing along the spines, until she found exactly the right one. She always found it. Always. There was never a thank you big enough for that. A child would take the book, say thanks quickly, and run off to the reading corner. No understanding of the care that went into that moment. No recognition that this woman, who was paid very little to shelve books, was giving something much more valuable. She was teaching that someone would listen. Someone would help. The world had people in it who noticed what you needed, even when you couldn't say it clearly. That lesson lived in the body for years before the mind understood it. And by the time understanding came, Mrs. Chun was gone. Not passed away necessarily, just gone from that library, moved on to some other job or some other city or some other chapter of her life. And there was no way to go back and say it. No way to tell her that those Saturday mornings mattered. That her patience and her care and her quiet presence taught something about kindness that lasted decades. The letter exists only in the heart now. Dear Mrs. Chun, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for helping me find stories when I didn't have the words to ask for them. Thank you for teaching me that people who don't say much can still say everything. Thank you for being there, steady and kind, in a world that sometimes felt too loud and too confusing. I wish I had told you then. I wish you knew now. There was a man who lived 3 houses down. Mr. Patterson. Everyone called him Pat. He was retired, had been for as long as anyone could remember. He spent his days puttering around his yard, working on his car, sitting on his porch with a radio playing soft music. He wasn't particularly friendly. He didn't wave or chat or invite people over. He just existed in his space, content and quiet. But he noticed things. If someone's trash can blew over in the wind, he'd walk down and set it upright. If the neighborhood kids left their bikes in the street, he'd move them to the sidewalk before someone drove over them. If a package was delivered and left on a porch in the rain, he'd put it under the eaves where it would stay dry. These weren't big gestures. They weren't accompanied by fanfare or expectation of thanks. They were just things he did. One winter, the snow was particularly bad. Everything was buried under white. School was canceled. The streets were impassable. And in the early morning, before most people were awake, Pat was out there with his shovel. Not just clearing his own driveway. He cleared the whole sidewalk. The entire block. It must have taken him hours. And when people woke up and looked out their windows, there was a clear path. Path they didn't have to create themselves. No one really thanked him properly. A few neighbors waved. Someone might have called out something from a doorway. But mostly, people just used the path and went about their day. Because when someone does something without making it into a production, it's easy to treat it as if it simply happened on its own. As if the snow cleared itself. Years later, at a different house in a different city, shoveling a different driveway, the memory came back. And with it, the understanding. Pat wasn't just clearing snow. He was teaching something about community. About doing things simply because they needed doing. About caring for a neighborhood not because anyone was watching or appreciating, but because that's what caring looked like. It looked like quiet action. It looked like waking up early and doing the hard work so others wouldn't have to. The thank you comes too late. Pat is gone. Not just from that neighborhood but from this world. There's no way to tell him that his lesson stuck. That decades later someone remembers. Someone tries in small ways to be the person he was. Someone clears their neighbor's walk. Someone picks up trash that isn't theirs. Someone does the quiet things hoping that maybe somewhere it teaches what it was meant to teach. Dear Pat, thank you for showing what good looks like without announcing itself. Thank you for teaching that strength is quiet and kindness doesn't need applause. Thank you for being the kind of person that a child could watch and learn from, even without knowing they were learning. I wish I had knocked on your door and said these words when you could hear them. There was a woman who worked at the gas station on the corner. The full-service gas station back when those still existed. She worked the register inside, behind bulletproof glass, selling cigarettes and lottery tickets and coffee that had been sitting on the burner too long. Her name might have been Diane. The tag on her shirt said something that started with a D. She had a face that looked tired. The kind of tired that comes from working night shifts and double shifts and raising kids on not enough money. Her makeup was always slightly smudged by the end of her shift. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days. She looked like someone the world had been hard on. Someone who had every reason to be hard back. But she wasn't. Every person who came through that door, she greeted them. Really greeted them. Looked them in the eye. Asked how they were. Listened to the answer. It didn't matter if they were buying $100 worth of gas or just getting change for the payphone. She treated every single person like they mattered. There was this one time. It was late. Maybe 10 o'clock at night. A teenage girl came in, clearly upset about something. Eyes red. Voice shaking. She was trying to buy something small. A candy bar, maybe. Her hands were trembling as she counted out change. And Diane could have just taken the money and sent her on her way. But she didn't. She asked if the girl was okay. And when the girl said yes in a voice that meant no, Diane didn't push. She just said, "Rough day, huh?" And something about the way she said it, the genuine warmth in it, made the girl start crying. Right there at the counter. And Diane reached under the glass as much as she could and said, Hey, it's okay. Whatever it is, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay." The girl wiped her eyes, took her candy bar and left. Probably never went back to that gas station. probably never saw Diane again. But that moment stayed. That moment of being seen by someone who had no obligation to see her. Someone who was probably exhausted from her own life, but still had enough compassion left to offer some to a stranger. That was a lesson. A lesson about how much power there is in small kindnesses. About how a few words from the right person at the right moment can change everything. About how dignity and care don't depend on circumstance. Diane could have been bitter about her life. She had reasons. But she chose differently. She chose to be soft in a hard place. And there was never a thank you for that. Not a real one. Not one that captured what that moment meant. The girl probably said thanks in a mumbled voice and walked out. But years later, as a woman herself, facing her own hard moments, that memory would return. And she would try to be what Diane was. Someone who stops and sees. Someone who offers kindness even when tired. Someone who understands that how you treat people matters more than almost anything else. Dear Diane, thank you for your gentleness in a place that didn't require gentleness. Thank you for seeing someone who was hurting and offering exactly what they needed. Thank you for teaching that exhaustion isn't an excuse for cruelty, and that every interaction is a chance to make someone's day a little less heavy. I wish I had told you that night. I wish I had said it properly. There was a teacher in high school. Not the main teacher. Not the one whose class everyone wanted to be in. This was the substitute. The one who showed up when the real teacher was sick. The one whose name nobody bothered to learn because she was only temporary. She taught English or tried to. The class was junior year. The students were restless and rude in the way that teenagers can be when they sense someone isn't permanent. She was older. Maybe in her 60s. She had gray hair cut short and practical. She wore cardigans even in warm weather. She spoke softly, which meant half the class didn't listen. And the ones who did listen often talked over her. It was painful to watch. This woman trying so hard. This woman who clearly loved literature and wanted to share that love. And a room full of kids who didn't care. There was this one day when she was reading a poem out loud. Something by Emily Dickinson, probably. Her voice was gentle as she read, putting emphasis on certain words, trying to help everyone hear the music in the language. And in the back of the room someone laughed. Made a joke. Got a few other kids laughing. And she stopped reading. She looked up. And for a moment there was something on her face. Not anger. Hurt. Deep hurt. The hurt of someone who was trying to give a gift and watching it get rejected. She closed the book. Smiled a small sad smile. And said, "That's okay. We can do something else." The rest of the class was worksheets. Busy work. She sat at the desk and didn't try to teach again that day. And most of the students were relieved. They dodged having to actually think. They could just fill in blanks and count down the minutes until the bell rang. But one student felt sick about it. Sat there wishing she had the courage to say something. To tell the others to shut up. To tell the substitute that she was listening. That the poem was beautiful. That it mattered. But she didn't say any of those things. She just sat there, filled out the worksheet and stayed quiet. Complicit in her silence. Years later, in a college literature class, that same student would read Emily Dickinson again. And she would think of that substitute teacher. Would wonder where she was. Would wonder if she ever knew that at least one person had been listening. That at least one person carried her love of poetry forward. That her gentle teaching, even when rejected by most, had planted a seed in at least one heart. The desire to find that woman and thank her was almost overwhelming. To tell her that she wasn't wasted on that classroom. That she made a difference, even if she couldn't see it. But there was no way to find her. No name remembered. No connection left. Just a ghost of gratitude with nowhere to go. Dear substitute teacher whose name I never learned. Thank you for trying. Thank you for loving literature enough to share it, even when it wasn't welcomed. Thank you for showing me what passion looks like and what grace looks like when passion is rejected. Thank you for teaching me that the quiet people, the gentle people, are often the ones carrying the most beautiful things. I'm so sorry I didn't defend you that day. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you that I heard you. I hope you knew. I hope someone told you. There was a grandmother. Not a blood grandmother. The grandmother of a best friend. Mrs. Wilson. She had a house that always smelled like cookies and laundry soap. Her living room had doilies on every surface. Her kitchen was small and warm and always full of something baking. She was the kind of woman who seemed to exist in a different time. Everything about her was old-fashioned. Her dresses, her speech, her manners, her values. When kids came over to play with her granddaughter, Mrs. Wilson would feed them. Always. It didn't matter if they'd just eaten. It didn't matter if they weren't hungry. She would put food in front of them because that's what she did. She cared for people by feeding them, and while they ate, she would ask them questions. Real questions. About school. About their interests. About their dreams. She listened like their answers mattered. Like they were adults worth conversing with instead of children to be tolerated. She taught without teaching. Through her way of being. The way she set the table, even for a casual snack with real plates and napkins. The way she spoke to her husband, with respect and affection after decades of marriage. The way she moved through her home. Unhurried, present, content. She was teaching what a peaceful life looked like. What it meant to make a home instead of just live in a house. What it meant to treat guests, even children, with dignity and care. One summer afternoon, she was sitting on the porch with a bowl of peas, shelling them. Her granddaughter and her friend were supposed to be helping but were mostly just talking. And Mrs. Wilson was listening. Really listening. When the friend mentioned that her parents were fighting a lot, Mrs. Wilson's hands paused for just a moment, then kept shelling. And she said, quiet and kind, "That must be hard for you." That was all. No advice. No platitudes. No trying to fix it. Just acknowledgement. Just someone seeing the pain and naming it gently. And somehow that simple statement made the pain easier to carry. Someone had seen it. Someone understood. That was enough. The lesson there was profound. Sometimes people don't need solutions. They need witness. They need someone to say, "I see your struggle and it's real, and I'm sorry you're carrying it." Mrs. Wilson taught that. Taught it through shelling peas on a summer afternoon. Taught it through her calm presence and her refusal to make anyone's pain smaller than it was. She died when her granddaughter was in college. The funeral was small. The friend couldn't make it. Was too far away. Didn't have the money for the trip. Told herself it was okay. That Mrs. Wilson knew she cared. But did she? Did she ever really know how much those afternoons meant? How much that simple kindness had mattered? How much she had taught about what goodness looked like in daily life? Dear Mrs. Wilson, thank you for feeding me body and soul. Thank you for listening like I mattered. Thank you for showing me what a peaceful life looks like, and what it means to make people feel welcome in your space. Thank you for seeing my pain and not trying to fix it, just acknowledging it. Thank you for teaching me that the most important things are often the simplest things. I wish I had told you. I wish I had said it before you were gone. There was a bus driver. City bus. Route 17. She drove the same route every weekday morning, picking up people on their way to work, to school, to wherever they needed to go. Her name was never known. Names weren't exchanged on city buses. People got on, paid their fare, found a seat, and existed in parallel without connection. But this driver was different. She greeted everyone. Every single person who got on her bus got a good morning and a smile. Even the people who didn't look up. Even the people who were rude or rushed or annoyed. She treated every passenger like they were a guest she was happy to see. And somehow that changed the atmosphere of the whole bus. People were a little kinder, a little more patient, a little more likely to say excuse me and thank you. There was one morning in particular. It was raining. Everything was gray and cold and miserable. The bus was running late. People were grumpy. And when one passenger got on, clearly having a terrible day, snapping at the driver about the delay, the driver just smiled. Said, "I know. I'm sorry. We're doing our best. I hope your day gets better." The passenger looked stunned, had been ready for a fight, had expected defensiveness or hostility, but got kindness instead. And something in their face softened. They mumbled an apology, found a seat, and the bus moved on. That was a teaching moment. A lesson in how you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. The driver could have been defensive, could have been angry, could have made that interaction worse. But she chose differently. She chose to meet hostility with grace. And in doing so, she taught everyone on that bus what strength really looks like. Doesn't look like fighting back. It looks like staying soft even when the world is hard. Over months and years of riding that bus, that driver taught so much without ever trying to teach. She taught that consistency matters. That showing up every day with a good attitude is its own form of heroism. That treating strangers with dignity costs nothing and means everything. That your job, whatever it is an opportunity to make people's lives a little better. And then one day the driver was different. Someone new. The old driver was just gone, transferred or retired or moved on, and there had never been a thank you, never a moment of saying, "You make this commute better. You make mornings easier. You teach me how to be better just by watching you do your job with so much grace." Dear bus driver on Route 17, thank you for your cheerfulness at 6:30 in the morning. Thank you for treating every passenger like they deserved kindness, even when they didn't act like it. Thank you for teaching me that how you do anything is how you do everything, and that even the smallest job can be done with greatness. I wish I had said something. I wish I had told you that you mattered. There was a coach, not the head coach, the assistant, the one who worked with the kids who weren't stars, the ones who were awkward and uncoordinated and probably never going to be great at the sport but were trying anyway. Her name was Coach Miller. She was young, maybe late 20s, fresh out of college, probably not making much money, probably could have been doing something else. But she chose to be there. On cold afternoons and early Saturday mornings, she showed up. And she worked with the kids who needed the most help. The ones who couldn't quite get their footing right. The ones who were scared of the ball. The ones who apologized every time they made a mistake. She worked with them patiently, breaking things down, celebrating tiny improvements, never showing frustration. There was this one girl who was particularly bad. Couldn't run without tripping over her own feet. Couldn't catch without flinching. Was only on the team because her parents insisted she do something active. She hated it. Hated feeling incompetent. Hated being the worst one. Hated that everyone could see her failing. Coach Miller pulled her aside one day. Said, "I know this is hard for you. I know you don't love this. But I see you showing up. I see you trying. And that matters more than being good at it. That takes real courage." And then she said something that stuck forever. She said, "The world is going to ask you to do hard things. Things you're not naturally good at. And you're learning right now how to do them anyway. That's the most important skill there is." That reframed everything. It wasn't about being good at the sport. It was about learning how to persist through difficulty. Learning how to fail and keep trying. Learning how to do hard things even when you'd rather quit. Coach Miller had taken something that felt like failure and turned it into a lesson about resilience. The girl finished the season, never got good at the sport, but learned something much more valuable. And years later, in other hard situations, She would remember Coach Miller's words, would hear that voice saying, "You're learning how to do hard things anyway." And she would keep going. But did Coach Miller know? Did she have any idea that those words had mattered so much? Did anyone ever tell her that she was teaching life skills disguised as sports? That her patience and her ability to see value beyond performance were changing lives? Dear Coach Miller, thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. Thank you for finding value in effort even when results were lacking. Thank you for teaching me that persistence matters more than talent, and that showing up is its own form of victory. Thank you for giving me language for resilience that I still use decades later. I wish I had told you then. I wish you knew what you did. There was a friend's father, Mr. Ramirez. He was a quiet man, worked construction, came home tired every day, hands rough from labor, clothes dusty, but every evening without fail, he would sit at the dinner table with his family and ask about their day. Really ask, and really listen. He would set down his fork and look at whoever was talking and give them his full attention. His wife would talk about her work. His daughter would talk about school. And he would nod, ask questions, offer thoughts. He never dismissed anyone. Never said their problems were too small or their joys too silly. He treated his family's lives like they were the most interesting thing in the world. That was a lesson in what love looks like. It doesn't always look like grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Sometimes it looks like a tired man setting down his fork and listening. It looks like consistent presence. It looks like making people feel heard. Watching that, as a guest at that dinner table, taught something essential. Taught what a good parent looks like. What a good partner looks like. It taught that attention is a form of love. That being present, really present, is one of the greatest gifts anyone can give. Mr. Ramirez died young. Heart attack in his 50s. The funeral was packed. So many people whose lives he'd touched. People from his work crew who talked about how he always looked out for the younger guys. Neighbors who remembered how he helped them with repairs. Friends who spoke about his quiet strength and his genuine kindness. He had lived a life that mattered. A life of consistent daily goodness. But had he known? Had anyone told him specifically about the lesson he taught just by being who he was? Had that friend ever said to her father, "Thank you for showing me what love looks like"? Probably not. Because those are the kinds of things people assume will always be time to say later. Until later runs out. Dear Mr. Ramirez, thank you for showing what daily love looks like. Thank you for teaching that tired isn't an excuse for being absent. Thank you for demonstrating that attention is precious and listening is holy. Thank you for being a model of manhood that was quiet and strong and gentle all at once. I wish someone had told you. I wish you had known how many people learned from just watching you be you. There are so many more. So many people who taught without teaching, who loved without announcing it, who shaped lives without knowing they were architects. The grocery store clerk who always said, "You have a nice day now," and meant it. The mailman who knew everyone's name. The school janitor who would whistle while he worked, turning cleaning into something joyful. The elderly neighbor who grew tomatoes and gave them away to anyone who walked by. The receptionist at the dentist who made scared kids laugh. The person who held the door. The person who let someone merge in traffic. The person who returned a lost wallet. The person who complimented a stranger. All of these small moments, all of these tiny teachings, they add up. They create a worldview. They teach what it means to be human among other humans. And so rarely do they get thanked. So rarely does someone stop and say, "That mattered. You mattered. What you did changed something in me." The letters exist only in the heart. Dear Mrs. Chun. Dear Pat. Dear Diane. Dear substitute teacher. Dear Mrs. Wilson. Dear bus driver. Dear Coach Miller. Dear Mr. Ramirez. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The words pile up unspoken. The gratitude accumulates like snow, beautiful and heavy and impossible to deliver. But maybe unspoken gratitude doesn't have to stay trapped in the past. Maybe it can transform into something else. Something living. Maybe the way to honor the people who can't be thanked is to become for someone else what they were. To be the person who sees, who helps, who teaches without trying to teach, who loves in quiet, consistent ways, who shows up and pays attention and treats people with dignity. Maybe the thank you doesn't have to be spoken directly. Maybe it can be spoken through a life lived differently, through choices made because of lessons learned, through kindness extended because kindness was received, through patience offered because patience was witnessed, through grace given because grace was modeled. That substitute teacher who loved poetry? Maybe the thank you is reading poetry to children now, sharing that love even when it might not be welcomed, trying anyway. That bus driver who smiled at everyone? Maybe the thank you is choosing to greet people warmly, treating every interaction like it matters because it does. That coach who saw value beyond performance? Maybe the thank you is encouraging someone who's struggling, seeing their effort instead of their results. The people who are still here, who can still be thanked, deserve to hear it. Not later. Not someday. Now. The parent who is still living deserves to hear, "Thank you for showing me what love looks like." The teacher who is still teaching deserves to hear, "You made a difference." The friend who has been consistent deserves to hear, "Your steadiness means everything." Because time is strange, feels infinite when we're young, like there will always be another chance, another opportunity, another tomorrow. But time is finite. People leave, people die, people move on. And then the only place left for gratitude is the heart, which is a beautiful place. But it's not the same as speaking the words while someone can hear them. So maybe this is the real lesson, the one being taught by all these ghosts of thank you. Maybe the lesson is this: say it. Say it now. Say it imperfectly. Say it awkwardly. But say it. Tell people what they mean. Tell them what they taught. Tell them how they helped. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect words. Just say thank you, while there's still someone to hear it. And for the ones who are gone, for the ones who can't be found, maybe the thank you lives in the carrying forward, in becoming what they were, in teaching what they taught, in loving how they loved, in making sure their small acts of kindness weren't wasted, in proving that someone noticed, someone learned, someone is trying to be better because of what they showed. The letters exist only in the heart, but the heart can speak through actions, through choices, through the way a life is lived. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that has to be enough. To live in such a way that if someone, years from now, wishes they had thanked us, they'll know. They'll know because they saw it in how we treated others. They'll know because we told them we noticed. They'll know because we said thank you not just to the past but to the present, to the people who are here now, to the people who are still teaching and helping and loving without knowing how much it matters. This is the transformation of regret into action, the alchemy of turning "I wish I had" into "I will now," the understanding that gratitude, even when late, even when impossible to deliver, still has power. It has the power to change the person feeling it, to make them more aware, more present, more likely to see and name and appreciate what's being given. So here's to the people who taught without teaching. Here's to the quiet kindness and the consistent presence and the small acts that shaped everything. Here's to the library workers and the neighbors and the bus drivers and the substitute teachers and the coaches and the parents of friends. Here's to everyone who loved without announcement and helped without expectation and gave without needing recognition. Thank you. Even if these words never reach you, even if you never knew, thank you. The lesson stuck. The love mattered. The teaching taught. And even though it's too late to say it to you, it's not too late to live it, to carry it forward, to become, in whatever small way possible, the kind of person others might wish they'd thanked. That's the hope. That's the redemption. That's the way unspoken gratitude can still speak, through a life changed, through kindness extended, through presence offered, through love given in all the same quiet ways it was received. If you've enjoyed this reflection, if it stirred up your own memories of people you wish you'd thanked, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. There are more stories to share, more memories to explore, more ways to remember the people who shaped us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering with me. And maybe, just maybe, thank you for deciding to tell someone today what they mean to you. While there's still time, while they can still hear it.